let's talk about one of the most incredible turnarounds in all of military history, the year 1942 in the Pacific. I mean, imagine a war where in just 12 short months, an unstoppable empire suddenly finds itself on the ropes. Well, this is that story. It's the story of how the tide of an entire world war was turned, not in years, but in a matter of months. Okay, so let's dive right in. At the start of 1942, the Japanese war machine was on an absolute tear. They looked completely unstoppable. But by the end of that very same year, they were permanently on the defensive. So the big question is, how? How did this incredible reversal happen? Well, it's a story of bold strategy, of game-changing intelligence, and, as we'll see, of one single fatal miscalculation. To really get why the turning point was so dramatic, you first have to understand just how powerful Japan's initial assault really was. So let's start with this campaign of expansion that absolutely stunned the world and put Japan on a collision course with the United States. Now, this didn't just happen overnight. Japan's military ambitions had been building for a good decade. But the real flashpoint came in July of 1941. The US hit them with a total oil embargo, basically cutting off the lifeblood of Japan's war machine. This created a huge crisis in Tokyo. They had to make a choice, and fast. Either back down or escalate big time. And they chose escalation. The thinking in Japan's high command, especially with guys like Prime Minister Hideki Tojo calling the shots, was that the United States was this sleeping giant, unprepared for war and just not willing to fight. So they decided on a massive gamble. The plan? Deliver one swift, devastating knockout blow to the US Pacific Fleet, paralyze the Americans, and then Japan would have a free hand to build its empire. And of course, that blow landed on December 7, 1941. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor was, from a purely tactical view, a shocking success. 2,400 Americans lost their lives, and the core of the American battleship fleet was left burning and sinking in the harbor. But here's the thing. Here's the massive mistake hidden inside that victory. The Japanese bombers never hit their most important targets, the American aircraft carriers. They just weren't there. They were out at sea on maneuvers. You see, carriers were the new kings of naval warfare. They could project air power for hundreds of miles. And the Japanese admiral in charge, he decided against sending a third wave to hunt them down. That one decision, man, it would come back to haunt the Japanese Navy in a huge way. Now, even after Pearl Harbor, Japan's string of victories kept coming. They invaded the Philippines, and after a really brutal campaign, they forced the surrender of all US and Filipino forces in May 1942. This was a real low point for the Allies, and yeah, this defeat was a great blow to morale for sure, but it absolutely could not break their will to keep fighting. But then, everything was about to change. Just 1 month after that loss in the Philippines, the entire course of the war was about to get flipped on its head in a single massive sea battle. This is the story of Midway, where Japanese overconfidence ran headfirst into American intelligence. So Admiral Yamamoto's plan for Midway was, brilliant on paper, but it was also incredibly complicated. He spread his powerful fleet all over the ocean, hoping to lure what he thought was a weakened American Navy into a final crushing trap. The big problem for him? The Americans weren't weakened, and they weren't walking into a trap. They were the ones setting it. You see, the American trap was sprung before a single plane took off. US Navy codebreakers had pulled off a miracle. They had cracked Japan's main naval code, JN 25. This meant they knew exactly where the Japanese were going and when they were going to attack. So Japan's elaborate ambush plan, it was about to become a trap for themselves. And the result was an absolute catastrophe for the Imperial Japanese Navy. American dive bombers found the Japanese fleet at its most vulnerable moment while rearming planes. Japan lost all 4 of its heavy aircraft carriers, but even more important, they lost hundreds of their best veteran pilots. These are guys that took years to train, and they were simply irreplaceable. In just one battle, Japan's naval dominance in the Pacific was gone. Just gone. Forever. Okay, so with the initiative seized at Midway, the US immediately goes on the attack. The target? A remote, jungle-covered island in the Solomons that frankly most Americans had never even heard of. But the battle for this island, Guadalcanal, would come to define the new, brutal reality of the war in the Pacific. So, why this island? This wasn't just about grabbing another piece of land. The Japanese were building an airfield there, and that airfield was a direct threat to the supply lines between the United States and Australia. So seizing it wasn't just offensive, it was about establishing a forward operating base, a beachhead, to start that long, bloody island-hopping campaign towards Japan. On the ground, this battle just became a showcase of terrible Japanese tactics. Again and again, their commanders completely underestimated the U.S. Marines who were defending that airfield, now named Henderson Field. They launched these desperate, wave after wave frontal assaults, thinking their fighting spirit would be enough. It wasn't. They were just cut down by coordinated American artillery and machine guns. A place that later became known as Bloody Ridge is a perfect, brutal example. You had a force of almost 3,000 Japanese soldiers attacking just 800 Marines. Look at the casualties. The Japanese lost nearly as many men as the total number of defenders. It was a grim lesson, repeated over and over, about the power of having prepared defensive positions. But in the end, the fight for Guadalcanal was really a victory of logistics. You had American planes from Henderson Field controlling the skies during the day, and the U.S. Navy fighting for control of the seas at night. And that 1-2 punch completely cut off the Japanese army on the island from their supplies and their reinforcements. They were literally left to wither away and starve in the jungle. So when you put it all together, from that miracle at Midway to the grinding war of attrition at Guadalcanal, the events of 1942 really represent one of the most complete and rapid strategic turnarounds in modern history. I mean, the shift in momentum was just total. Think about it. In December 1941, Japan had all the initiative. By June of 1942, that was shattered at Midway. And by February 1943, when the last Japanese troops evacuated Guadalcanal, the initiative belonged completely to the United States. Japan's brief moment of triumph was over. The long, grinding war to victory had truly begun. When you look back at 1942, it's so clear that, yeah, industrial might and military power are crucial. But the Battle of Midway proved something else. It proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon you have isn't a battleship or an airplane. It's knowing what your enemy is going to do next. And that one piece of knowledge in the summer of 1942 really did change the world.